Hello and welcome back. I hope you are well. Today I have a little sketching session, so feel free to grab your sketchbook or your stylus and tablet and draw along with me, or just pop me on in the background. Today I'm using tricolor pencils, which I showed in last week's art haul. And tricolor pencils have three different colours in the lead. I'm using Sunset, this colour here, to start with, and Sunset has yellow, red and pink in the lead. I start off the sketches with a very light undersketch, which might be difficult to see at first, but you'll see it build up over time. And I do that just to set the proportions and get the relative size and shapes of the elements in order to create a really solid foundation for the drawing so that I can go in with the heavier lines on top. Going into this spread, I wasn't super sure what I wanted to draw. I knew I wanted to do some animal studies, and so I decided to start by warming up and drawing a lion's eye. Lions have really interesting and beautiful eyes. To be honest, a lot of animals have really beautiful or interesting eyes, or both beautiful and interesting eyes. Horses have absolutely gorgeous eyes. But lions' eyes are really heavily influenced by the structure, the facial structure of the lion, especially when it comes to the cheekbone and the brow of the lion. And you can really see this from most angles of the lion, but especially if you look from the side, so a profile view of the lion, you can really see how the brow overhangs the eye and casts a shadow over the eyeball. And you can also see how the cheekbone protrudes under the eye, and this affects the shape of the eye in a profile view so that it almost looks like an arrow, but you can sometimes see this slightly curved line to the eye underneath due to the shape of the cheekbone as well. It's really interesting to see. I really recommend go looking at some pictures of like lions, and tigers have quite similar facial structures as well, just to see how the underlying structure of the lion or animals in general affect the outer elements of the face. Is one really interesting thing about like learning animal anatomy or even human anatomy too, and then seeing its effects on the surface is really interesting. And once you start learning about animal anatomy or human anatomy and you start seeing these elements on the outside and you're like, I'm learning, it's so amazing. Or maybe that's just me, I should know. I really enjoy drawing animals and learning about animal anatomy, and a lot of it does cross-reference. I can't remember the exact word for it. There's a word for it where the things you learn about one animal carries over into other animals a lot of the time. I can't remember the word for it right now, but there's, if you look at, say, mammals as a whole, there's a lot of very similar skeletal structures, muscles, and everything going on, but the way that the skeletal structure has changed, or the influence of certain muscles on the animal and their size and location and things like that, are all different or slightly different based on what they do and how they hunt or how they don't hunt and everything like that. But you can see like there's biceps on a lion, there's biceps on a human. So while there's a lot to learn in general, if you go in and really study an animal or a few animals, you do start to see similarities and things that you can use from those studies in other animals as well. It's not like you have to hyper study every single animal with the same intensity as you would like a human, or the first time you'd learn a mammal or whatever like that. You definitely see similarities and differences that you can use your existing knowledge to decipher or understand. So after doing the lion's eye to warm up, I decided to keep going with that for the rest of the spread, and I did some lionesses. I drew some heads in different angles and also a front body pose. I tried to make sure to get different angles while doing these studies because it's an area I want to improve at with animals as a whole, not just lions, animals and humans. Head angles is something that I'm currently working on because I identify it as an area that needs a lot of improvement for me, especially when it comes to very particular angles. So for me, it's very, very slight 3/4 views. So not quite a full 3/4, but when you take, say, a head-on view and then tilt it ever so slightly left or right, or if you have a completely profile view and then tilt it ever so slightly forward, those angles I tend to struggle with sometimes. And I do a profile view with a very, very slight tilt so that you can see some of the front of the muzzle for the final lion head in the spread. But this first head is like a slight 3/4 view, but it's more of a 3/4 view than the final one. So it's something that's a little bit more comfortable for me. It's still an area that I need lots of improvement in, but it's more comfortable for me as a whole. I think it's useful for, at least it is for me in my practice, to identify areas that I struggle with, areas that I'm afraid of, because areas that you're afraid of more times than not are just areas that you aren't as confident in, and the only way you will gain confidence is by drawing more and more of it, studying it, learning about it, and then improving at it. And by improving, by practicing, you gain the confidence. So I've been trying to reframe fear in my art practice this year into something that's almost positive. It's a sign of finding something that I know I want to do, but if I'm afraid of doing it, it's because I'm not confident in it, either because I've not practiced it enough or I know that I'm not as strong in that thing. And then using that in order to figure out where I need to go next in my studies. And I found reframing fear like that a really, really powerful tool, not just in my artistic growth, but in my mental health as well as an artist. And it's really, really helped me, and it's something that I'm going to be going further with in 2023. I'm probably going to do an art goals video, possibly, if you'd find that interesting. I've been watching a few people's 2022 art goals summaries and their goals for 2023 for artists on YouTube recently, so I might drop mine in, maybe. We shall see. Let me know if you'd be interested about that in the comments, and if you have any goals as well for 2023 or how your goals for 2022 went. I do apologize for my voice in the video. Like I said last week, I'm still recovering from the after effects of getting sick. I especially am struggling with the breathing, and my vocal cords are still struggling quite a bit, but overall I'm recovering and I'm on the mend now. It's mainly just the after effects, and Emmy is not helping with that. But I'm taking breaks while doing the voiceover today in order to rest my voice a bit in between, which is why some areas might seem a little choppy in places. It's because I'm taking breaks, I'm resting my voice, making sure not to push myself too much. Back to the sketching, what you're seeing me currently doing is a front body view of a lioness laying down, and you'll see me spending a lot more time getting the proportions, the relative size and shape of everything down and in its place before I go in with the final lines, because I really, really want to study the body of the lioness here. And you'll see me use the pencil to get the relative sizes and angles. So I use the head of the lioness to understand the relative size of everything else by using the head. And the front right paw of the lion, but what appears on the left for you, was the bit that I struggled the most on with this drawing. I am more confident with lion and big cats in general, with lion heads, than I am with their bodies. Most of my studying of animals this year was spent on studying the head structure, especially of big cats. And I did spend some time, quite a lot of time, studying the bodies as well, but it's an area that I still have a lot of improvement to go at. There's a lot involved once you start bringing in the whole body of an animal. There's the gesture, all of the anatomy, the way things twist and turn, the positions that they can and can't go in. And the more elements you bring in, the more structures you have to deal with in perspective. And there's a lot involved once you start bringing in the body. So it's something that I am trying to improve a lot more at. Drawing lion heads is a bit of a comfort thing for me now, because I drew so many of them from reference this year. I can draw lion heads from imagination now in angles that I'm more comfortable with, especially like front views, profiles, midway, three-quarter, things like that I'm a lot more confident with. And I will sometimes just sketch them from imagination. Right now I'm drawing from reference in order to study, especially with the body. I really, really want to get better at drawing the bodies so that I can get just as comfortable with drawing bodies from imagination. The angles of the forearms really, really drew me to this pose. She's laying on a rounded mound, and her front forearms are just draped over this rounded hill. And I loved the angles of them. I loved how they were twisting in space as well. And it was quite a difficult thing to capture the twists of some of the forearm. So what I tried to do is I tried to use the angle of the paws to help with that, but also my understanding of the basic forms of the major muscles of the forearm to understand or to try and portray the twisting and the angle of the forearms laying like they are. I'm not as confident with the musculature of a lion outside of its head. And it's an area again that I'm trying to improve at, but I have a very, very basic knowledge of the major masses that show up on the forearms. And for example, the bones on the forearms, you can see like this angular sort of twist to them because of this angle of the bone. And I can see that and portray that now, but when it comes to like the more specifics, so like the location of each tricep, each element of the tricep and things like that, especially when they rotate in space or they might be slightly hidden due to the angles, things like that, the intricacies, something that I am only just dipping my toes into. But I tried to use the basic forms of the muscles that I could see to portray the position of the arm, especially on the one that you see on the left. And then just to finish it off, I just threw in some grass to try and show that she's laying down and that the grass is kind of covering her belly. You can't see her belly from the front. And I finish it off with the slight three-quarter view of a lion head in profile. And like I mentioned, this is one of the things that I struggle with quite a bit, is portraying the slight tilt, the slight rotation of the head. And the thing that I particularly struggle with is showing that tilt throughout the whole of the head. So I might show it in the muzzle just fine, but then it kind of looks a bit odd further up the head, is something that I've noticed in previous sketches. This is definitely an improvement for me, and I've just got to keep at it, keep studying it, keep studying structure, so not just drawing from reference like this, but also drawing basic shapes. So getting a head like this and then breaking it down into simple forms, so boxes and cylinders and spheres, and then creating a head out of those simple shapes and turning that in space. There's lots of different ways that you can study in order to improve, and those are some of the things that I've been doing. I do really love the Evening Storm pencil that I'm using here. I did end up falling in love with the Sunset pencil, the first one I used, but Evening Storm I fell in love with just from the swatching. I love it so much. Going into 2023, there's definitely a lot of different subjects that I'm interested in improving at, and different animals I'm interested in learning about more and learning their anatomy and their structure. I want to learn more about some other mammals like bears, I really want to learn about. Horses are definitely one that I'm interested in, and I feel like that's going to be quite a thing to tackle from what I've heard. Horses, to most artists I've heard talk about, are almost a step below humans in like the intensity that you have to study them. Not quite as intense as humans, but apparently we pick up more on a horse than we do other animals, like noticing where things look off, but not quite to the same degree as humans. Our minds and our eyes are designed to pick up on very slight intricacies on humans, so that it's a lot easier for us to pick up things that look off. But that's apparently still slightly true with horses. So that's probably going to be an intense thing to study, but it's something that I want to tackle for sure. So I want to improve at some different animals. Of course, still keep going at improving with humans as well. So here is the finished spread with the tricolor pencils. Next week I'm probably going to break out the brush pens, the different coloured brush pens I got. And let me know in the comments if you've ever used tricolor pencils before. Do you like sketching with them for fun? Have you done anything more finished with them? Let me know. And I will see you next week for next week's video. Happy holidays, and I hope you have a good winter time. Bye.